I'm excited to sew along with Riley Blake Designs, where each week you're going to get a new block to sew. And one of the things that is super, super handy for these is using these design boards. This is a Lori Holt product from Riley Blake Design. As you can imagine, this block has quite a few squares. So it's nice to be able to lay them out on a block that they're going to stick to. See, it's not stuck at all. It's just adhering all on its own like magic. And it's nice to have a bunch of them. So sometimes they're a little harder to find, but they're really, really easy to make. And I also like making them with my own fabric on the side. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to whip these up so that you can have them at the ready if you want to join us for this sew along, or if you just want to use them in whatever projects you're doing day to day. So let's get started. You can make these boards in any size that you want. I like this 14 by 14 the best because a 12 by 12 quilt block is very standard, and that gives you a little bit of room to move the pieces separate from each other before they get sewn together. It is also a great size for lots of other projects. So I would prefer to have multiple bigger ones than the smaller ones. But if you want, you can do whatever size that you want. We can make two 14-inch boards from one 20 by 30-inch piece of foam core. We're going to cut two out of that. And then it is basically just a piece of foam core that has some batting. So just find some scrap batting. And then we're just going to take 2.5-inch strips. We're going to sew them together. I'm going to show you how to do that and wrap it around so it's cute. The batting being on here is what is going to make your fabric stick when you are moving it around so that it's not sliding. All right, so these aren't quilt pieces, but I'm just going to show you. Just put that on there. It's going to stay. I can turn it upside down. It's staying on there. So you can put lots of pieces on there and it's not going to go anywhere. Then you're going to need a glue gun because we are going to glue the batting on. We are also going to glue this side binding on and lots of glue stick. All right, so I have this lined up with this long edge on the 0 line, and then I'm going to put my ruler on the 14-inch line, just like you would be cutting a strip of fabric, but we are doing foam core. And don't freak out and have heart palpitations. You'll notice that this says paper only. I do have a rotary cutter that I only use for different big paper projects like this or other things. Never use your fabric rotary blade with foam core unless you're ready to change it. Just like cutting paper with your fabric scissors will dull that as well. But look at how nice, I think I did just change that blade. Look how nice that is. So now this is 14 inches wide. And then we just need to do the same thing to cut two 14 by 14-inch pieces out of the 20 by 30. Now we have our two pieces of foam core. We need to prepare the batting to be the same size. So what I do is I just take extra batting that I have and I put it under the foam core, and I'm just going to use the foam core like I would use an acrylic ruler. I have cut this to size before, and then I found that it's not perfect. So this is the quickest way to go. So now I am using a fabric rotary blade because we are cutting the batting. So now that is the perfect size, and we will get the other one done just same way. The next thing we need to do is we need to cut and prepare our fabric that we are going to be putting around the sides. And the way to figure out how long you need that fabric to be is you take the size of your square, multiply by 4, add a few inches. So 4 times 14 is 56. So if we do 2 strips, 2.5 inches wide times width of fabric, we will have more than enough. Just like making quilt binding. We're going to do 2.5-inch strips. So I'm going to do this blue, and we're going to need 2 for each of the binding boards. I'm just going to walk through creating one with you, and then every other one, it will be done the same way. So now we are going to sew these together just like you would sew together binding for quilting fabric. But if you're not a quilter, I'm going to show you how to do this. We're going to put this right side up, and I'm going to put this right side down so that these are right sides together and they overlap. Now you'll notice I made sure the selvage was past the edge because we don't want the selvage on the side. I'm lining it up with the lines on the board to make sure it is nice and straight. I'm going to grab a smaller ruler. I'm going to draw a line that goes corner to corner. That's where we want to sew. And then I'm just going to put a pin in each side. We're going to sew on that line, and then we are going to cut this off 1/4 inch from the edge. So let's head to the sewing machine. So we're just doing a basic straight stitch. And then you can either take it back to your mat and use your rotary cutter to cut this, but just to save time, I'm just going to cut by hand, cutting 1/4 inch to the outside of that stitch line. And then when you fold this down, it makes one longer strip with that angled seam, so it's gonna look great. So what we need to do is we need to get our 2.5-inch strips and we need to get them folded so that the 2 raw edges are in the center. And then we are going to zigzag stitch all the way down the entire length. I'm gonna show you with these 3 pieces of fabric, 3 different ways to do it. Most traditional way with no tools other than your iron is to fold the strip in half, matching those raw edges, and press. Then open it back up, and then you're going to fold each side's raw edge to the center and press without pressing out that center crease. And now think about doing this for 60 to 80 inches of length. It's a lot. So that's way number 1. Then I remembered that I had this little tool sitting around, and this is a Clover fabric tube maker that a lot of people use to make jelly roll rugs. It is perfect for this because what it is, it's basically a bias tape maker that is the perfect size for 2.5-inch strips of fabric, because most of the bias tape makers that you get are too small. So the way it works is just like a bias tape maker, you're going to push your fabric through and get it started. So just take a second to get this lined up nicely on this side, get this pulled out. So it kind of goes crooked when you're first pulling it out. So you're going to be looking at this side to make sure these are going up the sides evenly. And then pull this out and then just make it so that it's straight. Those raw edges are in the center and just press the tip of it to get it started. And then you're going to put this B piece in here and kind of get it to click. So see, it goes over top and it clicks in, and that helps guide the fabric so it doesn't float around as much. Then you can just use it just like any other bias tape maker. Just iron and pull and just watch and make sure the center is staying evenly in the center as you go. That's why I don't do it too quickly. Get it pressed, and then we can take it to the sewing machine and do the zigzagging. So for this project, and because this thing is new and novel to me, I know lots of people have probably used them for years. People always like to tell me in comments things aren't new. But you know what? They're new to everybody at some point, and this is new to me today. So I'm going to do the sewing first and the pressing second, because I think press it faster if it's already sewn together. Take the time to get this lined up well to begin with so that the whole rest of the length is going to work well, because this one is going to be long. And you can choose to either use thread that matches or an alternate color, like a contrasting color. I'm going to be using white so it'll show up and you can really see what we're doing now and where this stitching ends up when we glue it to the design board. All right, so I've sewn to the end of this really long strip. And now we're just going to take it back and press that flat. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to glue this batting down. And the way I found to be most efficient is to put it evenly on the board and then just fold it back, run a bead of glue, and then press that down, because hot glue dries pretty quickly. You're not going to be able to do it across the entire surface at the same time. So I usually hook it on one side and then I just do it in little strips. I usually overdo it a little bit and do it down the center a bit as well. So you're just adding glue, folding it back, pressing it down to adhere it to the foam core. So the next thing, I don't want the selvage on here, so I'm just going to cut this at a slight angle. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to glue this around the edge, and that zigzag is going to go over the edge just like that. So we have fabric on the front, fabric on the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to glue all the way around the edge with the zigzag. I'm just going to start kind of in the middle. I'm just pressing that down. We're going to go all the way around. These are fantastic to have if you're doing quilt alongs or sew alongs where you're doing a bunch of pieces. As you can see, we use quite a bit of glue, so make sure you have lots on hand. So now we are back to where we started and we have extra. So what I'm going to do before I glue this section is I'm going to decide how much of an overlap. And I just want it to overlap an inch or two. I'm going to cut that into a triangle, so kind of an arrow tip. And before I attach it, I'm going to glue a little fold. So I'm going to take the back side, a little bit of glue, fold that down. Okay, put a little bit on that side, fold that down. That way we're not going to have anything fraying as we use these in years to come. So that's going to overlap where we started and has a cool little point. Get that glued on there. Okay, so step one, we have it glued all the way around. Now we need to glue it down on each side. And I always start this from the front because we want to make sure the corners on the front where we are going to be working look the best. Now, if you want to do a mitered corner, it's just like quilting. You're going to push one down and then you're going to put this one and you're going to cross your fingers that meets with a nice 45-degree angle there, which it does. Yay, team. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue just a couple inches of this side because we know it works well in this direction. You want to try not to do so much glue that it comes out from under here, but you do also need to make sure this stays down. And then I'm going to glue down the first section from where we started, just to where that fabric is. And you can feel the heat a little bit through the fabric, but it shouldn't be enough to burn you. And then if you want to, well, I don't even need to. I was going to put a little dot of glue under there, but it's holding quite well. And then I'm just going to keep going all the way around using the same process. Now we're back to the beginning. And then you will just, when you get to this overlap part, you want to try and make sure you line it up so that the bottom and the top are lined up as well as you can. Top is done. Now we're going to just do the same thing on the back. This is a little bit easier on the back. It's not going to pull any batting, and I never worry quite as much about the mitered corners on the back because it's the back. It's not the part I'm using or that people are seeing if I'm using these in live videos. And there you have it, a brand new, ready to roll design board. Again, let me know in the comments what you think. Would you sew this stitching first? Would you leave it? See how I did it white so you really see it? Whereas on another one, with this fabric, I use navy blue, so you're not seeing that stitching at all. Just a very different look. So let me know which you prefer. And happy design board creating and happy sewing and quilting.